Welcome to GolfCask The Blend, perfect for the golf and whiskey enthusiast. Question and answer series.
Hey there, GolfCask Nation. This is Bailie here, bringing you a new question and answer of The Blend. In my new studio setup, still working on some pieces, but overall, this is where we're going to start to do a lot of our sit-down conversations when people come. So we're going to have the bar side, which is really cool, or the kind of the tasting side, and then we're going to have our sit-down enjoyable cocktail side, or enjoyable neat and just have a conversation set. And of course, we have our at the computer station set as well. So now my studio actually has 3 separate components that I'm able to film from. So this will be my first attempt of filming the blend with our new setup, more casual sitting area. So without further ado, let's answer 3 golf questions, let's answer 3 whiskey questions, and let's answer 3 blend questions about whiskey and golf. So question number 1, what is the best way for me to improve without taking lessons or doing kind of swing change and technique pieces? Great question. Golf is much more than technique, right? If technique was the only way to get better, then everybody that spends hours and hours on the range would be the best golfers in the world, which doesn't happen. So to understand how I need to get better, you have to understand yourself and what it takes. For me, kind of generically, what would be the best way for you to get better fast without improving your golf technique? To me, number 1 is understanding targeting. And by targeting, that means how I actually attack the golf course, and how do I actually move the golf ball around, what am I aiming at, and having that understanding of where to aim based off of what I can do can really influence your ability to score quicker than any lesson you'll ever get. So I like to use finger dispersions, so you would hold up fingers. So let's say I shoot in the low 80s. So that means I'm going to have a dispersion rate of about 15% on average. So each finger is roughly 3%. So 5 fingers left and right of the hole would be my average dispersion. Now I could have a shot shape that I see quite often, a cut for a right-hand player, a draw for a right-hand player, how the ball moves. And then with that, I can adjust how I angle my hands to the target. But let's say, again, I don't have a shot shape that shows up every time. So I could actually hold up to the fairway off the tee box and go hand to hand and say, inside of my 2 fingers, inside of my thumbs, where can I aim that takes away the biggest potential of creating a hazard shot or a lost ball or starting to use the rules of golf? So just by holding up my hands either off a tee box, approach shot, I can really start to get an idea of where to aim better. And if I aim better, golf to me is like blackjack. It's a game of probability and statistics. So the more times I can prevent big numbers, keep myself in play, and allow myself to play the hole as designed, I have a really good chance of scoring well. Where people go really wrong is they get behind that concept of how far can I hit it? Let me take dead aim at everything. Let me challenge parts of this golf course. That works for really, really high-end players some of the time. But again, having that understanding of I can attack the golf course on every shot, and understanding my variability and playing within that variability gives me a better chance to score. I'm going to tell you right now, if you shoot in the hundreds, if you shoot in the 90s, even in the 80s, if you start to use finger dispersions, and you can do this inside of training, right? Hold up 2 fingers, how many shots, 2 fingers on each side of the hole, how often do I end up within that 3 fingers, 4 fingers, 5 fingers? You can really get a good understanding of what your ability is to control the golf ball, and once you understand that ability, now I can make very practical decisions on aiming. I love TrackMan, Flight Scope, there's so many of them out there, right? That show you dispersion rates, play fun games, but on the golf course, you don't have that ability. The good news is the good Lord has given you fingers, or at least for most of you out there, and you can go out there and start to aim better using targeting with finger dispersions. Go to YouTube. My friend Rob Fales and I shot a 10 video series. Each video is about 3 minutes long that goes into great detail on how to use this. So I would really recommend you to go watch that. I guarantee you, for higher handicappers, I'm gonna throw a number out there. I guarantee 10% better play by targeting better. So if you're shooting 100, I'm gonna take off 10 shots. If you shoot 80, I'm going to take off, well, okay, maybe that's not good. But for really, really high handicappers, if you're shooting in the hundreds, I guarantee you 10%. And then again, as we start getting lower, you know, that percentage will change, but you will make better decisions and play better golf. So that would be, to me, the best way to get better without having to take a technical golf swing lesson. All right. I'm sorry, and that question came from a GolfCask member in South Carolina. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say the names to date, but hey, I have the questions here on my phone. I just want to make sure I hit them. Question number 2. What is the best What are the best practices improving your putting? And this is a local conversation I actually had with a lesson the other day, who is also a GolfCask member. So what is the best practices for me to get better at putting? Putting is very simple. There's 3 main components: read, speed, start line. There's branches off of that, but those are the 3 main drivers of performance on a putting green. Can I control speed of the ball? Can I make a good predictable read? And then can I start it relatively on line? So understanding strengths and weaknesses inside of those 3 areas will define how to practice better. But for a big blanket category, what is the best way to get better? I would say speed control and read would be best, right? We're going to start it relatively on line, depending on our capabilities, but even a higher handicapper is going to start the ball usually within a degree or 2 of their intended start line. Where we really get into trouble is if we don't have a read or we don't have speed to match that. I've seen probably the best improvement I've seen across the board. I used to think it was read, but I would definitely say it's speed control. If your ability to hit it a certain distance, so by speed control, I'm not talking speed of the putter or speed of the ball. It's more of a distance control game, right? So my ability to control the distance of a ball off the putter face is really, really important. So your ability to what I would call baseline, be able to hit 10-foot putts, 20-foot putts, 30-foot putts within a certain variance. And there's great videos inside of YouTube on that, or you can go into GolfCask, find the same videos. But that information of being able to control the distance of the ball, I think is of the utmost importance. Most golfers, even in their 70s, don't have a very good concept or understanding on how to control distance, how far they're hitting the ball. So designing a system where you can really, on command, hit it 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet, start to bridge the gaps. If you have that ability, one, you'll see 3 putts go away because, again, you know, my ability to hit it relatively close to the hole becomes distinctly better. And then you start pairing that with a good read and, you know, a reasonable start line, you'll start to see more putts go in the hole and more putts challenging the hole to go in. So to me, again, I would say understanding the 3 main components is huge, but speed control disproportionately, I have found, especially for higher handicappers, is much more important than in any of the other 2 legs. I used to think read was the most important. And read is important because if your read is way off, you know, your miss can be exaggerated. But I think, again, for the higher handicapper that doesn't want to invest much time in green reading and learning those skills, I think that speed control piece, distance control, is really, really important. So I hope that was helpful. And again, I had a player that was, you know, a single-digit handicapper getting ready to go play college golf. We went through a whole understanding how to create speed, what pieces, movements create that speed, changed their entire life, which was really, really cool. And then number 3, this one's a firebomb. And I know who asked me this, and they want me to get into gross details of stuff going on in my life, but I won't do that. Who should I listen to advice when it comes to improving my golf game? So who should I listen to improve? 1, a good coach. What makes a good coach? God. A good coach is a player that is a coach that is shown to be able to get players better and move them to their goals. To me, is a good coach. A good coach doesn't mean they're the best swing coach, doesn't mean they're the best this or that, but it means that they have the ability to help a player move towards a goal. The dangers inside the golf industry right now, there's a lot of great technology out there that can enhance a player and move a player, but doesn't mean the player is going to get better and it translates to getting better on the golf course. There's a lot of great methods and models out there where they're teaching a certain way to do something and that will improve you. But again, the beauty of golf is there's no one model, there's no one method that really makes that huge of improvement. So maybe I go learn green reading, I learn a technique, great. But that doesn't mean, one, I can control distance, doesn't mean I putt well, doesn't mean I hit the ball well enough to actually use the method to be able to putt better, and things like that. So be careful that thinking of finding a method or a model that's going to change it. Also, a good coach usually has some knowledge inside the system, right? I would want to learn from somebody that can move me forward, but I also want to learn from somebody that has played the game and understands the game, because again, golf is bigger than technique, right? It's bigger than just creating this one piece. A lot of golf coaches I've met out there, really fine people, some of them not fine people, but there's a lot of really good golf coaches out there that can't break 100, can't break 90, and they're out there teaching high-level pros a method or a methodology or something inside of statistics, and they just can't break 100. So again, be careful. They might have an understanding inside of data science. They might have an understanding inside of a swing model that might make you better. It might not, might make you worse. But again, be careful on who you listen to, because I've coached college golf. I've coached some of the best athletes in the world. I play a bunch of amateur events when I was younger, less so as I've gotten older with kids and family, but I'm going to start playing that more in 2025, which is going to be a really cool series coming we're going to talk about. But I'm going to start playing more events that way. Being with a coach that has thrown up when they've had to lead and just let it all go, or made a huge run and almost won a tournament. Having that understanding is really, really important, again, because golf is more than a technical piece. It's more than my elbow position. I've spent the last 3 months working on this one elbow position. Have you gotten better? So again, who should you listen to? You should listen to people that have had a track record of getting people better. Ideally, somebody that's been in the fire, that understands the game. And here's a great rule. Challenge your coach to go play golf with you one day. If they refuse to play golf with you one day, that means they don't trust their skills, which makes me a little bit nervous on their ability to coach me. Doesn't mean that all coaches that don't have the skills to shoot a certain score can't help you get better, but I would wonder a little bit on that. So that would be a fun task. And again, if anybody wants to come play golf with me, we'll head up to Green Hills or Birdwood. We'll tee it up, maybe even with a little whiskey, and have a good old time. But again, having that concept of understanding, but be careful who you listen to. There's a lot of false merchants of information out there. There's pariahs. There's people that think if you do this one thing, you'll get disproportionately better. Golf is not that game. I've seen it inside of the betting world, inside of data science. There's a lot of companies out there now that are trying to come up with systems to be able to predict score, be able to predict who's going to win events. There's just too many variables inside of golf to make that prediction worthwhile, right? So again, be careful who you listen to. Be careful. And again, I would even say in the data science world, be careful. There's a lot of data science companies out there where they've never played golf. They're just data scientists. They're taking numbers and making it sing a story. I know from my time inside of golf analytics, you can make numbers sing a bunch of different tunes depending on how you shape them and present them. So just again, be careful. There's a lot of people out there that are going to sell you a bill of goods, but again, make sure that they have a track record to get better, that they understand and can play the game, and then again, they give you advice that's sound to what you're trying to do and not basing you off of some system or some person, or basing everything off of tour data, right? Who cares? If I shoot 90s, is it fair to compare me to somebody that shoots in the 60s? Not really. So again, having that coach that understands where you are, where you're trying to achieve is really, really big. Just be careful of those method and false prophets out there that say, I can teach you on YouTube, I can teach you inside of golf, the golf magazines or on the TV or inside of this software or this method of doing something that it's guaranteed to make you better. They're all just subtle pieces in your improvement. And I always tell people golf is like the decathlon. So if you think of Olympic sports, to be the decathlete champion, you have to be good at all 10 events. You can be super at 2 of them, average at most of them, but you can't be really, really bad at a few of them and expect to win a decathlete medal, right? So that golf is the same way. There's so many aspects of golf. You'll be really, really high end at certain pieces. You'll be okay at certain pieces. What we have to do is find those deficiencies and raise you up. And again, if you have a method or a methodology teacher that's only really good at one thing, as long as that discrepancy elevates you, they'll seem really, really smart. But again, that's just a small piece on moving you forward. So that's what I would kind of look at as a coach, finding someone that is a good track record, that is proven to get people forward. Ask coaches, ask friends, ask other players that you play with, who do they see, what do they like about them, and get their insight as well. That way you make a really good informed decision on where you want to go. So that's the golf side. I hope that was helpful. It was helpful for me because again, I've noticed as a golf coach myself, I've seen the good and the bad in the industry, and there's some great golf coaches. Again, if you want to reach out to me, I'll refer you to a bunch of golf coaches out there that are just flat out phenomenal. But again, to me, there's a difference between a coach, and a coach is a person that elevates and teaches a player, opposed to a swing instructor or a methodology professor or something along that line. So again, be careful on taking advice from some groups, because some are not really out there to get you better. They're out there to promote themselves, and that's the worst kind of coach. All right, let's switch over to the risky question. So we're going to do 3 questions on whiskey. Question number 1 is from one of my favorite followers. She's beautiful. She's my wife. She actually asked me this the other day when we were driving. I figured this would be a good question. How does the choice of grain impact the flavor of whiskey? All right, so what are our main grains? We have corn. What do we know about corn? Corn is sweet. Corn is mellow. Corn is bourbon, right? So most American whiskeys use a lot of corn. That is kind of that robust flavor. You have barley or malted barley. That is your Irishes and your Scotch. It gives you that sweet bread bakery note, right? So to me, when I think of malted barleys, I start to think more of breads. And then again, if I'm thinking Scotch and Irish, I'm starting to think floral notes and things along that lines. We have rye, which is kind of the American version of barley. That is our number 1 grain that grows throughout the Northeast. Rye is spicy, punchy. It's a great grain to give you those spicy notes, pepper, cinnamon, peppermint, things along that lines. And then we have finally wheat. Wheat, again, if you think of wheat bread, you think of sweet. You think of very approachable inside of whiskey, so a wheated whiskey is going to give you that much softer, friendlier note. And then a lot of times there's other grains that are used. The other grain that I see the most would be some sort of oat, and I see this a lot of times inside of different Irishes. So when they pot still, you have to have a certain amount of barley, or malted barley. You have a certain amount of barley, and then you can bring in a third grain. And a lot of times the Irish will bring in an oat or a different grass grain. So again, you'll start to see oat that way. But the main 4 grains: corn, barley, wheat, and rye. So each of these are going to give you a different flavor, and a good mash bill can actually start to combine these, right? So a mash bill is when you combine your grains with your water and allow it to basically start to ferment and create your first kind of very low alcohol run. So a lot of times, a lot of different distillers will bring barley in with corn and maybe rye. And the reason a lot of people like to use barley or malted barley is because it is a great enzyme, and the sugars inside of that are really good at starting to create great fermentation process without having to add a bunch of additives to start to create that mash bill, to start to create your first very low, anywhere from 7 to 10% of alcohol inside of that mash bill. So barley is used a lot of times. So what you'll see inside of a lot of American whiskeys, it'll be 60% corn, 20% wheat or rye or something like that. Then you'd have like a 10% barley, because that enzyme inside the barley does such a good job in creating the right atmosphere to be able to create great whiskeys. So a lot of mash bills, again, will actually be combinations. So what you'll see in Ireland, you'll get a lot of single malts, 100% barley, or 100% single or malted barley. You'll get blended in Irish and Scotland, where they'll actually take a bunch of different whiskeys and blend them together. In the States, you tend to get a lot of bourbons, which are going to have corn as being your highest grain, and then you're going to have either rye or wheat or barley, or a combination of the 3 to kind of finish out your mash bill. The funny thing about Canada, which I really appreciate, is when Canada runs, they tend to blend a lot. And by blending, what they do is, so when they run The stills, if they're doing corn, they run 100% corn, and then they'll mix that 100% corn with a certain percentage of rye, a certain percentage of wheat, and they'll blend it together. Where America, Scotland, and Ireland, if they're going to make a mash bill, they're actually going to bring the grains together and ferment it that way, where the Canadians actually do it separately. And it's kind of how Canada gets a really smooth, sweet blended whiskeys, and most of their whiskeys are blended on the sheer fact that that's kind of the nature of what they like to do, because the distiller and the blender loves having the options to bring those pieces together, where if you put them all into a mash bill together, it's kind of what it is, right? So it limits your ability to blend different. Well, it doesn't limit, it changes your ability to blend. So that's where the Canadians are a little bit different. But to me, the grain is kind of the DNA, right? The barrel is going to give you the most of your flavor, but the grain is kind of the DNA, the essence of your whiskey. So it's a great question for my wife. And I'm a huge bourbon fan. I'm a huge rye fan. I'm starting to like wheated whiskeys, which are bourbon with wheat. And again, I do enjoy a good Irish, a good Scotch. So I try to enjoy all the different offerings out there and enjoy all the different grain options. And again, don't get pigeonholed into a single grain, right? I really like 100% single malts. Great. Try the blendeds. Try an American rye. Try, a Canadian blended something, right? So it gives you that ability. Just because I like a certain grain doesn't mean I always need to drink that grain. Push yourself, try different grains. You'll appreciate that in the long term. All right, so let's dive in here on our next question inside of whiskey is, are single malts inherently better than blended whiskeys? So inside of the States, there are blended whiskeys, but not nearly as much. There are blended, don't get me wrong, but when you think of bourbons, cask strengths and all that, tend to not be blended very often. When I think of blended, I start to think of Scotches, and I start to think of Irishes. So especially when they started talking single malts. So what does single malt mean? Single malt means that it comes from one distillery, and it's 100% malted barley. Is that inherently better than a blended whiskey? The answer is maybe. So single malt means it just comes from a single grain, single malt, single grain, aged, boom, here it is. Could be watered down. That's not blended, so they could cut it for proof, but that is what a malted or 100% single malt is, right? What is a blended? Well, blended means that they're going to take a bunch of different barrels, bring it together at some point, and add a bunch of different age, a bunch of different flavors to create a flavor. So blended whiskeys, think of your Johnny Walkers, one of the best-selling whiskeys in the world. Those are blended, right? To get the same color, the same taste, week in, week out, year after year, bottle after bottle. The blender basically knows these barrels inside of this part of the rick house at this age is going to give me this flavor, and if I combine this with this other part of the rick house, this other age, and I bring these barrels together, it's going to give me this flavor time and time again. So the blender is spectacular at being able to take a bunch of different barrels, and again, the barrels are all going to taste a little bit different year after year, month after month. So being able to take those different barrels and blend them together to give you a certain flavor profile. Just because it's blended doesn't mean it's watered down or bad. Blended just means that they're going for a certain flavor or a certain taste, and that's what they're going for. Now, some blended whiskeys, they blend it to save costs, to change the proof. Like, there's reasons that they blend a lot of times maybe to save money, but just because it's a blended whiskey doesn't mean it's cheap or not enjoyable. So does a single malt inherently better than a blended? I would say the single malt inherently is different, because it'll be affected by the barrel and the aging, and there's no way to go in there and mix it and change the flavor. So there'll be more variability, but it doesn't mean it's better. So again, just because you see a cask strength American bourbon, just because you see a single malt, doesn't mean it's better than a blended. One of my favorite whiskeys inside the States is Wild Turkey Rare Breed, which is taking a bunch of different bourbon barrels, blending it together to create this flavor profile. There are great blended whiskeys, so don't run away from the fact that something is blended or it's not 100% or it's cask strength or things along that lines. The blender is brilliant in what they do. They understand flavors, they understand the aging process, and then bringing things together is really fun. Also, you can kind of start to blend your own. I've did wild turkey and whistle pig combined together to kind of create a bacon, what do we call it? So instead, yeah, we called it turkey bacon, bringing together wild turkey with whistle pig. I do have a poor man's version of Pappy's that I'm going to create a video on. Is basically combining 3 different whiskeys to try to create a Pappy Van Winkle-ish style whiskey. So there's a lot of fun, and as you get more into whiskeys, blending yourself is really fun. So again, don't be scared of the blended product. Blended just means those are multiple whiskeys coming together, and the beautiful thing about the blended is the age statement on a blended whiskey has to be the youngest whiskey that's in the blend. So if you had a 10-year, 12-year, 14-year-old barrels come together, it would be a 10-year blend. If you had the same thing and you threw in a 2-year, it would be a 2-year blend. So just because you see blend and it's young doesn't mean it is only young whiskeys inside of the blend. By rule, it states that it has to be labeled the youngest blend, so that way the manufacturer's not trying to pull something over on you. So again, just because it's a single malt or it's a cask strength or barrel strength or whatever, don't shy away from the fact there are great blended as well as there are great single malts as well. Number 3, what role does proof play in whiskey for flavor and drinkability? So whiskeys at minimum are going to be 80 proof, and at maximum, you know, they're going to be up there. Most drinkable whiskeys, you're going to be maybe in the 120s. Most, I think, Scotch, Irish, most bourbons can't be more than 180 or 160 proof, which is way up there. Most whiskeys are not going to come off of that strength. But I would say most whiskeys would run between 80 proof and 120. Which again, if you divide proof in half, that gives you percent alcohol. 40% alcohol up to about 60% alcohol would be kind of the normal range. So why would a person want an 80 proof versus 120 proof or something in between? Good question. Well, most distillers, when it comes off the final run, so scotches and American bourbons and things like that will distill twice. Irishes will do 3 times. So when it comes out of the still at the very end, it can be at rates up to about 160 proof. So when they put it in the barrel, they might add water to proof it down, or they might add water to, when they take it from the barrel to the bottle, add water that way to proof it down. And the reason that they add water is to, 1, save money. If I add water to a whiskey, that means my whiskey in the barrel goes longer. So there's always that. But a lot of people do not enjoy a whiskey that fights. So I would say anything that gets above 100 proof and above, you're starting to get kind of a punchy whiskey. There's a lot of ethanol, there's a lot of fight to that whiskey. There's a lot of people that love the fight, that love a whiskey that wants to punch a little bit. My honey hole would probably be about 110. I like a fight, but I don't like to get whooped, right? So, you know, but there's a lot of people that like 80 proof, 85 proof, 90 proof. So typically, it's not always true, but typically a lower proof whiskey, something in the 80s, is going to be a little bit friendlier, a little bit smoother, a little bit easier to drink because you don't have that ethanol punch. But in the fact that they've watered it down, or you know, they've changed the amount of proof inside of the whiskey, you tend to lose complexity in flavors. So higher proof whiskeys tend to be more complex, tend to have more spice, tend to have more flavor than the watered down version. Again, just because you're adding water, it's going to change the profile. And also when they add water, you actually change the actual compound of the whiskey, and it creates a new flavor as well. So the beauty of the system is some people swear by low proof, and some even think you need to drink under 80 proof to really unlock all the flavors that are inside the whiskey. And there's some people that are like, I won't drink anything under 120. So who's right? Nobody. The key is to find the proof that you like, and again, understand that as you change the proof of your whiskey, you will change the flavor. So what I would do, here I have Booker's. It comes in at about 120. This one is at about 127. So what you can do with Booker's is you could actually add that to your glass, start adding a drop or two of water, and say, what did that change? What did the flavors change? Because every time you add a little bit of water inside of that whiskey, it's going to change the flavor profile. And most of you know this if you've never added water before, but you've had whiskey on ice, the whiskey when you first drank it, when the ice is first introduced to when you kind of finish the glass, the flavor, everything changes, right? Because that ice cube's starting to melt, it's adding water to the system, it's changing the flavors. So just because you enjoy a lower proof whiskey or a high proof whiskey, again, I've had great, very complex whiskeys at 80 proof. And I've had a bunch of whiskeys at 120 that they weren't complex at all. Now they might have had a strong flavor of this or that, but it didn't make it a great whiskey. So don't be scared to try different proofs. Understand what the proofs are going to bring, and don't walk away from a whiskey without trying it, because an 80, 92 proof whiskey can be just as good as a 120 proof bare knuckle fighter. So that's kind of generically what proof does differently. Now we're going to dive into my favorite section, and we're actually going to pour a glass here. We're going to have a little Booker's, I think. Question number one, what are some of the ultimate post-round rituals you can do with your whiskey? So think about it. What are some of the things you like to do when you finish a round? I know my buddies and I get together when we play a quick round of golf. We'll meet at the 19th hole. At my club, I do have a whiskey locker. So a lot of times we'll just open up the whiskey locker and I'll put in some fine whiskeys for us to sample. So we'll play some fun games. We'll reminisce about the day. But we tend to throw out, before the round plays, we'll say, whoever does this has to toast. So I think understanding your toasting game is really, really important. So one of the rituals we have, again, when we tee it off, we'll say the worst score of the day has to come up with a toast for the winner. Or we could even go vice versa. The winner today will get to toast the worst score of the day. So the beauty of it is during the round, you're kind of paying attention to what you're doing, but you're making sure you're paying attention to what everything else is going there. Because when we come together at the end of the round, we want to be able to create the best toast possible, and you have to kind of pay attention to what's going on in the golf course. So we like to have a toast challenge. We'll also do, of course, we gamble. Not gamble, we challenge ourselves out on the golf course, and then we just might back it with currency. And again, the beauty of betting is you can play a bunch of different games. Golf allows you to adjust by handicap skill level, and it's just fun to be able to compete. And then we'll also, more than anything, to me, I've just spent anywhere, if we've played 9 holes, an hour and a half to 2.5 hours with them. If we've played 18, I might have spent 4 to 5 hours with you. So going into the bar, again, it just gives you that ability to reminisce, enjoy, and really understand the camaraderie of whiskey and golf. And that's what I love about the two together. Why did GolfCask come about? My love of whiskey. When you sit down and have a whiskey with a friend, you're looking at a 30-minute process to have a good pour, good conversation. And again, when you're playing golf, it's the same concept. It's being with others for a large point of time, usually not with your phone on, not doing those things, and just making life, just slowing life down to make things better. So again, cheers, sláinte, Booker's, sorry. Got to get rid of the evil spirits, double tap. Booker's, let's have a little sip here. Ooh, 126, that is warm. Question number 2, what's the best destinations in the world that offer great golf and whiskey? Well, right off the bat, Scotland, right? Scotch is the #1 whiskey in the world. St. Andrews, oh man, so many great golf courses over there. So much great golf, so much great whiskey. 5 main regions in Scotland: Spiceland, Highlands, Campbelltown, Lowlands, Islay. You know, you have great whiskey, great golf, great people. The Scottish people are phenomenal. So just having that together is a great place to come together to drink whiskey and golf. And cool stuff coming on in 2025, 2026 about some destination trips inside of GolfCask. Scotland is on there. Also, Ireland. Who hasn't been to Ireland? Oh, if you haven't been to Ireland, you need to join us, right? Great golf is there as well. You know, you got Old Head, you got Portrush. There's so much great golf over there. And, of course, the home of whiskey, right? That's where the monks started it. So you got Irish whiskeys, you have great whiskeys, you have great golf. And again, you're looking at a lot of links golf courses between Ireland and Scotland. So you get that flavor of the open barren lands, a lot of water surrounding you, wind, no trees. And then of course you'd come to the stateside, and then, you know, to me, you got Kentucky. Can never go wrong with Kentucky, right? The home of bourbon. And there's some great golf trails throughout Kentucky, so there's great golf and there's great whiskey that way. And again, if you start to think of American courses, you start to think more Parkland, which those are more like courses that are cut out of tree lines, right? So it's more of a park setting. And then I think one area that people don't know very well, and I'm very fortunate to live in the state, I would say the state of Virginia has great golf and whiskey as well, and you should come December 6th to 8th here inside of Charlottesville, Virginia. We're going to be playing golf, we're going to be drinking whiskey, and we're going to do a distillery tour, all that great stuff. Actually have 2 great tastings, just a great weekend of golf and whiskey. Have 4 spots available if you're still interested. This December 6th to the 8th in 2024, reach out to me and secure your spot. But again, I think there's great whiskey and golf all over the world, but I would say definitely Ireland, Scotland, Kentucky, and then I'm going to throw in Virginia just because that's where I live and that's where I play golf. And there's great companies like Lost, Catoctin, Silverback, just so many really good, Bowman's, so many really high-end whiskeys inside of the state of Virginia. I would really encourage you to give Virginia whiskeys a shot. All right, the final thing here is, final question of the day is, what whiskey pairing pairs best with a difficult par 3 surrounded by water and trouble? So if I was on a tee box right now and I was playing, let's say, the Island Green at TPC, so there's just a green in the middle of a lake, what whiskey would I pair with that? On the American side, I would go in the bourbon side, I would go cask strength, because it's a fighty, punchy hole. The chances of me making birdie is really challenging. The chances of me making a really big number by hitting it in the water is elevated. So I want something punchy and mean. I would think an Elijah Craig single barrel. I would say Booker's, anything cask strength that's going to give you that 120, 125 proof, to me would be a great pairing for a really difficult par 3 that would challenge you. And again, it would create a fight, right? So when I'm standing on a tee box and understanding there's no room right or left, short or long, I have to be very accurate. This hole has brought the fight. I have to bring the fight to the hole. So I would definitely bring a cask strength single barrel, something to the hole. And for me, I love a high rye bourbon. So again, Elijah Craig, Booker's, a Wild Turkey, Rare Breed, any of those really punchy. I just had the cask strength Redwood Empire, really good pipe dream. Also High West, their cask strength is really spectacular as well. So I would say anything kind of spicy like that would be really understanding, would be a good merge between a difficult par 3 and a good high-end whiskey. Now just remember, on difficult par 3s, the number one rule if you want to be able to improve your score, and we talked about this earlier, what can I do to improve my score to become a better golfer? Your ability not to hit it in a hazard on a par 3 is huge. If you hit in the hazard, that's almost a guaranteed double. So again, your ability to control your dispersions, we talked about earlier, finger dispersions, gives you a better opportunity to hit the green, which is going to improve your score greatly. So again, that's why I said targeting is really important. And just generic rule is, do not hit it in a hazard on a par 3. Do everything in your power to avoid that. That way you will score much better. I've told this story in the past. It's really funny. People don't believe it's true, but it did happen. We had a player in the practice round that there was basically a hazard. It's kind of a peninsula green. Water over 3/4 of it. The exit, the peninsula was kind of in the back of the green, so not really an option to hit it. In the practice round, she hit it in the hazard. The first round of the day, she hit it in the hazard. Both times she went to the drop area, hit it really close, made the putt, made bogey, so kind of broke the norm. We played 36 holes that first day. I'm standing on the tee box of that hole. She comes up and goes, they didn't move the pin or anything, so she's like, same distance as earlier, how should I play it different? I said, how far is it to the layup area? And she just kind of looked at me and she goes, like 40 yards. I said, why don't you chip it over to the layup area and make par? And to her credit, she hit it to the layup area, hit it up to the green and made par. And then the last day, she did the same thing. She hit it to the layup area, hit it up on the green and made par. So she learned very quickly her ability on that. For whatever reason, the hazard was giving her problems. She figured out a way around the hazard, made sure she didn't end up in the hazard. So she basically walked away with 2 pars, where earlier she walked away with 2 doubles, one inside the practice round, one inside the first round. So again, knowing your limitations, knowing your ability, knowing your game. Again, our goal is to shoot the best score we can shoot. It's not how pretty we shoot it. So take that with you as well. Cheers, Solancha. Thank you so much for joining me inside of the questions and answer. I'll release this as a full video. I'll chop it up for golf questions only, and I'll chop it up for whiskey questions only, and then both, and probably send out the best segments that I've enjoyed as individual content as well. Make sure that you like us on the socials. Make sure that you attend GolfCask events when you can. Go to golfcast.com. Join us. It's for free right now. We got really cool stuff in the pipelines. The forum is out, which we call the 19th hole, so there's great dialogue inside of the whiskey and golf world there, but we're going to be building upon that inside of 2025. So make sure, if you enjoy our content, yes, go to YouTube, yes, hang out in Rumble, yes, follow us on all the different socials, but really go join us inside of GolfCast. There's information inside of GolfCast that we don't put inside of YouTube or inside of Rumble. But again, if you have a love for whiskey, golf, community, you need to join us inside of GolfCast. Thank you so much, Solancha. Cheers, and I look forward to seeing you in future events as well as in future episodes that I'll be bringing inside of everything we do here inside of GolfCast. Cheers. Life is good.